Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more waterfowl patterning. And I've definitely got a combination out here today that I'm really interested to see what it does. And we've definitely got kind of a mixture of old technology and new technology here, that's for sure. So this is definitely gonna be pretty interesting to see what kind of pattern we can actually get. Now for the load I've got out here today, it's something a little bit special. And if you've been following along with some of the patterning we've done, you may remember we've tested this load once before, but I brought out some of these. Now these are not the Western Super X loads here, but if you can see up on top here, there's that piece of tape with a hand marked number 2. These are some of my grandfather's hand loaded duck shells from the early to mid 80s. These are a 3-inch 1 7/8 ounce of lead 2s that he loaded up back when you could still shoot lead for waterfowl. So definitely a really interesting loading. And I'm not going to tear one of those shells apart today. We already did it in the previous test, but I'll post a couple pictures up here on the screen of kind of what it looks like. As you can see, it's just lead number 2 shot with an old school style looking plastic wad that has 2 petals that open up on it. So definitely a little bit older of a design, but it's one that worked really well for him. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what it does through today's setup. And as far as that setup goes, I've brought out this is my Mossberg 835 Ulti-Mag, and for a choke I kind of went an interesting direction. This is the stock turkey full choke in the gun. It's a 710 constriction. However, these 835s are overboard to a 10 gauge bore size. So if we would have went with something like a modified or a normal full choke, it would definitely not be anywhere close to the kind of constriction you would have in a normal 12 gauge bore. So I went this route. A little bit tighter, but still pretty open overall here. So we'll see how it fares, because I think since this is overboard, we're going to need that little bit more constriction to get a decent pattern out of these old loads. So as for the test, we're going to do it the same as we usually do it. I have the duck target set up down at 40 yards. I also have the chronograph, so we'll be able to see what kind of speed that he loaded these shells up to. So let's get you guys down here with a view of this target, and let's take this shot, and we'll look at what kind of chrono speed we had, and we'll go see how they performed. I'm definitely curious to see what happens, because this setup is a lot of more kind of modern technology with overboard and stuff like that compared to what these shells are. So it might be a really good combination, or we might see some mediocre results. I don't know, but there's only one way to see, and that's to go over here and test it. So let's go see what happens. Okay, so that shell gave us 1346 through the chronograph. So although you're not necessarily moving as fast, 1450, 1500 like a modern waterfowl load, 1346 with a lead load of 2s, you're going to be carrying a pretty good amount of energy down there. So velocity is definitely pretty good for an old lead load up here, but how did they actually shoot down range? Let's go take a look and see. Alright, so now we're down here looking at our 40-yard paper, and this is what we got. Now, I would say we absolutely have a dead duck there. There's 2 right through the chest and a couple more in the wings. So absolutely, I'd call that a dead duck. However, the majority of our pattern did hit low for whatever reason on that shot. But what we see down there is a pretty good looking pattern, but it's a pretty tight looking pattern overall as well. I mean, if our duck was down there in the middle of that, I mean, there's nowhere across pretty much the entire width of that paper right there that duck would be able to fly and make it through that. So that's definitely a pretty good looking pattern down there a little bit low. And honestly, it might be a touch too tight being through that, quote unquote turkey full instead of the regular full choke in that gun, which for reference, his old gun was a fixed full choke barrel. So I don't know, maybe we should, back off the constriction a little bit and see how it performs out of that 835 as well. But overall here, I'm definitely liking what I'm seeing. I just wish it was a little bit more centered up, which kind of is what it is, unfortunately. But if we were still allowed to use lead shot for waterfowl, I wouldn't hesitate to take that out after some ducks or geese or anything like that. So overall here, I'm liking what I'm seeing, but maybe we should test it through a little bit more open choke and see what kind of leeway it gives us then as well. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if that's something you want to see. Okay, and here's the wad out of that shell, and it's pretty interesting. If you paid attention to the pictures earlier that I put up, or have seen the other video where we cut one of these shells open, you would know that we had a white 2-petal wad that came out of that shell. And clearly, this is a different wad. So I don't know if he ran out of those wads and switched to these, or just decided to change to these for whatever reason, but I do know that these are still the same 1 7/8 ounce load of lead 2s in the same shell in the same box. So it's definitely pretty interesting that he switched wads. But as for the wad in this case, not really anything too special to see. No rips, tears, nothing stuck down in there, but it is different than what I expected it to be. Alright y'all, well, what did you think about that performance there? Definitely pretty interesting overall. Good pattern, it was just a little bit low, but it might be a little bit tighter than what I would ideally like it to be. And I think clearly we know why, probably because of the choke we decided to use, but that's why we test things and kind of find out. Because I was expecting that slightly tighter choke with the overboard 835 to kind of even out. So I think we should test another one of those shells with something like maybe a modified choke or the actual full choke for the gun or something like that that's a little bit more open constriction, and see what we get then as well. But let me know y'all's thoughts about it. Are you kind of on the same page, or do you really like how that performed there? And is that about what you expected to see out of a load like that? You know, for a 40-year-old load, I have really no complaints about that, other than I wish I could still take it out and use it for waterfowl, but it's a lead load, so we can't do that, unfortunately. But with that being said, I've got a bunch more testing to film for y'all, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we do have the channel Instagram as well as a mailbox where you can send things to the channel. So if you're interested in that information, it will be in the description for you. But I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.